When Richard Jobson, the English explorer, returned from West Africa in 1623, he claimed that the men in the Mandingo tribe had penises so big that they were burdensome to them. 400 years later, the stereotype still persists. It provides the punchline to 1,000 jokes. So the Queen said, "Is it a black man's cock?" It's the subject of 100 chat-up lines. So it's true what they say about black men, wink suggestively. Make sure you only say that to a black man. And black athletes, is it true? And black athletes are judged as much for their lunchboxes as their performance on the track. It's one of those topics that exists somewhere between myth and reality, and it's possibly not in black men's interest to confirm or deny it. I've heard more than one black male stand up making some crack along the lines of, "That's one stereotype I don't have a problem with." So what's the truth about the enigma of variation? Did black men really have such burdensome beaver cleavers? I asked women, in your experience, does any race or nationality have larger penises than the others? Over half of the women who responded said they'd had not had a chance to compare. The ones who thought they'd had enough experience of all the cocks of the world to make a judgment concluded 43% yes, 56% no. Of the 400 women who said yes, over 200 of them said that it was a black man. Sorry, I can't read what that said. I think it's over 300 of them said it was a black man who were bigger in their experience. Is that a significant statistic? Almost certainly not. First, the women are making judgments based on memory. It's unlikely any of them thought to take any calibration equipment along with them. We also don't know the size of their cock sample. Are they making this decision based on having seen one black penis and one white one, or one white one and 10 black ones? Most women are not going to have seen enough men's penises to be able to make any kind of useful assessment. We must conclude that with so much anecdotal evidence, we're at least spotting a trend, but it's possible these women's opinions are swayed by preconception and belief in the cliche. Statistically, women are safer drivers than men, yet many men, armed with the stereotypical notion that the reverse is true, will manage only to observe the times when their prejudice is confirmed and ignore all the terrible male drivers that clutter up our highways. Is something similar happening with women here? I think this anecdote, which comes from a man, is very telling. In January 1980, I arrived in Antigua after sailing across the Atlantic and went for a shower in the municipal showers. About 30 people in open lines, 15 white, 15 black, ideal to compare, looked all very similar, about the same size. Suddenly the door opened and in walked a 5'5" Rasta, his dong dangled down to his knees. True. The implication here is that the story proves the myth. In fact, it does almost exactly the opposite. The vast majority of the men he saw had cocks of the same size. Given there's a range in sizes between all men, it's not significant that one of the 16 black men had a large penis. Statistically, one would expect someone like this in the range of either black or white men. You also have to ask yourself, if it had been a white man with a massive cock who'd walked in, would the story have even been recounted? Was it merely because, in this instance, the stereotype was seemingly confirmed that makes it worthy of telling? Similarly, it's more significant that the majority of women who felt qualified to make a comparison reported no noticeable difference. If black men's penises were significantly bigger than white men's, then you wouldn't expect quite so many women not to have noticed at all. There have been some attempts to find out scientifically. According to a follow-up to the Kinsey report made in 1979, based on self-administered tests involving 10,000 white men and 400 black men, the average erect penis was 6.15 inches for the former and 6.44 inches for the latter. The average circumference was also 0.13 inch bigger than the black correspondents. In the flaccid state, black men were 4.3 inches longer and 3.78 inches in circumference, while black men were 4.34 inches long and 3.78 in circumference, whilst white men were 3.86 inches and 3.16 in circumference. We should remember that self-measurement tests can't be relied on for accuracy. Men dig the ruler in. And it's also worth noting the sample of black men is much smaller than that of white, so it would only take a few self-aggrandising participants to skew the figure. In any case, the difference is only 1/3 of an inch, which hardly suggests the monstrous proportions that the stereotype would have us believe. Richard Edwards set up a website called www.sizesurvey.com, which attempted to answer many questions about size based on results sent in, again self-measured, by readers of the site. He concedes that the samples for black and Hispanic men are still small and says therefore the results reported below concerning the aforementioned groups must be considered tentative, pending a larger number of responses. His finding reports the average erect lengths are Caucasian 6.5 inches, black 6.1 inches, Hispanic 5.9 inches, East Asian 5.5 inches. Interestingly, the average flaccid lengths were 3.7 inches of black men and only 3.4 inches for Caucasians, but Caucasians are bigger in this survey. Edwards tentatively suggests this may be responsible for the perception that black men are bigger because their flaccid penises are bigger, though again I would point out the difference is very small. Edwards also asked men about their perceptions about their own size. He concludes, it's interesting to note the vast majority of black subjects stated they tended to be well endowed, an opinion which was not borne out by the results of the study. Although a really conclusive scientific study of this subject is never likely to be carried out, I would say the evidence we have suggests that East Asian penises are generally a little bit smaller than those of Europeans and African races, and that the photo finishing the race between black and white lunchboxes is too close to call. So where did this pervasive notion of all black cocks being bigger than bread boxes originate? The truth of the matter is much less amusing than those of us who will tell such jokes might imagine. Ironically, far from being complimentary, the stereotype began as a means of dehumanising and demonising the African peoples. Reports from early explorers and scientists suggest that at least in one respect, Africa was the land of the giants. 19th century British explorer Sir Richard Burton wrote, "Debauched women prefer Negroes on account of the size of their parts. I measured one man in Somaliland who when quiescent, when it wasn't erect, numbered nearly 6 inches. This is a characteristic of the Negro race and of African animals, e.g. the horse." His contemporary, Jacobus Souter, a French surgeon, went one better when he wrote, "It was amongst the Sudanese that I found the most developed phallus, being nearly 12 inches in length by a diameter of 2.5 inches. This was a terrific machine, and except for slight difference in length, was more like the penis of a donkey than that of a man." It's telling that in so many of these descriptions, white explorers were at pains to make black men appear as animalistic as possible. Scientists such as Charles White argued that Africans' penises were similar to those of gorillas in appearance and their prodigious size. This discovery ignores the fact that gorillas and all apes actually have much smaller penises than men. It was, of course, convenient for the Europeans to equate African men as being no more than beasts, as then they'd have no qualms at using these people as slaves and taking their stuff away from them. To emphasise the size of their members and their wild lusts would also make them a threat to civilization and to white women, which would further justify their mistreatment and enslavement. Throughout the period of slavery and its aftermath in the USA, stereotyping black men as savages with uncontrollable lusts and huge penises would justify many of the atrocities of the Ku Klux Klan. The feelings were so strong that even consenting couples were punished. In her book White Women, Black Men, Martha Hodes recounts this truly horrendous story. When a black man and a white woman were accused of cohabitation in Georgia, a doctor recalled that the coloured man was taken out into the woods, a hole dug in the ground and a block buried in it, and his penis taken out and a nail driven through it into the block. That a large butcher or cheese knife, as they called it, very sharp, was laid down by him and a light wood piled around him and set on fire. The knife was put there so he could cut it off and get away, or stay there and burn up. The man chose to escape. The effects of this false preconception are still being felt by black men today. We probably all laughed along at the plight of Horse in the film The Full Monty. He felt he didn't live up to his nickname and was frantically trying to increase his length in time for the full frontal strip show that he was about to participate in. Yet this is a genuine pressure. One black man I spoke to explained that it puts him under incredible stress when he first sleeps with a white woman. They have high expectations of size and performance and often vocalise them in advance, excitedly saying things like, "Ooh, I've never had a black man before." He said some black men do everything they can to live up to the hype, and admitted that his brother used a spray to numb his penis so he can keep going longer. Despite its seemingly flattering connotations, once you understand the reasons for the stereotype, the jokes suddenly don't seem funny anymore. I'd have to conclude that in a world of amazing penile variation, there are some things which are the same. Whether your penis is black, white or yellow, it makes no tangible difference. Though if it's yellow, you should probably think about seeing a doctor. That's not right.